Hello, welcome to theCUBE here for our exclusive coverage of IBM Z17 launch in New York City. I'm John Furrier, host of theCUBE, with my co-host Dave Vellante. Dave, IBM Z remains the core platform and growth driver for IBM. We got a great lineup coming in theCUBE, hear about AI, hybrid cloud, security, automation, energy efficiency. All the analysts are abuzz, a lot of breakthroughs. I'm looking forward to a great lineup of IBM executives to break it down.
Yes, Z is an enduring and foundational platform for IBM. Of course, you and I talked to 3 IBM executives. I kicked it off with Ross Morey. Ross is the general manager of Z and Linux One. Talked about platform innovations. Ross essentially owns everything from RACF, which is the security framework, on up all through the hardware. And then you sat down with Tina Tarquinio.
Yeah, right? VP of product, she's got the keys to the kingdom.
Yeah, so you got the product portfolio piece. And then I came back with Skylar Loomis, who's the GM for IBM Z software. She owns all the software portfolio up above, including all the database and all the other platform pieces. So really good discussions.
Yeah, great shift in the investor narrative in the marketplace from cloud migration to innovation with AI on-prem with new hybrid workloads, Telum 2 processor and Inspire, AI accelerator, and a lot more silicon advancements, DPU on chip. We're gonna break it down. Check out these interviews from theCUBE. We'll be right back.
Hi everybody, we're here at 1 Madison at IBM's New York headquarters. My name is Dave Vellante. I'm here with Ross Morey, who's the general manager and responsible for the IBM Z portfolio. Ross, great to see you again. Thanks for coming on.
Hi David, it's great to be here. See you again. It really is a fun day here at Madison.
It's where all the action is now, right?
I love it.
Has big announcement. You know, we had the analyst sessions this morning, but let's first of all set up your scope, responsibility, what areas of the stack that you kind of own, if you will.
So from an IBM Z point of view, I directly own the hardware, all of the hardware platforms. So the IBM Z and IBM Linux One. Arvind looks at me to manage the whole stack though, across the IBM company to make sure software, maintenance and service, storage, IGF Global Financing, IBM Consulting, sales are all, I would say, in sync with what we're doing as well though, but directly I'm responsible for the hardware.
Well, it makes sense, right? Because the Z and the mainframe, it's an integrated system. It always has been an integrated system. That's the strength of it. When you're selling to clients, I presume they're not, in their mind, they're not splitting things up and saying, sell me on the hardware, sell me on the software, sell me on the storage. Like, they want an integrated solution. They want a business outcome.
Yes, they do. That's absolutely right, and they're expecting that. And if our seams show, so to speak, that's not a good thing. So we work very hard to be that integrated solution for the clients because that's what they're running in their IT shops.
When people think about mainframe, they think it's a market in decline, something that IBM is managing. That's not the case. You showed a slide, which you also showed at the financial analyst meeting as well. And I didn't fully grasp it at the time, but if I understood it, it was basically you showed this bar chart of cumulative growth, revenue growth, from I think it was Z15 to Z16 was, if I got it right, 120%.
Yes.
So that's kind of the area under the curve over the life of the program, correct?
That's a 3-year statement, yes. So best performing mainframe program ever. And there's reasons for that. And what I also like to look at is just what trajectory are we headed, 5, 10-year trajectory as well. And so from a revenue point of view, Z16's been an outstanding success. Thank you to our clients. But I think it's because of the relevance of the mainframe in their environment today, which I say is different than it was maybe 7, 8 years ago. 7, 8 years ago, we were in decline and cloud was going to be everything. Everything moved to the cloud. I think there's a rationalization that's come around. We've talked about, IBM's talked about hybrid cloud for many years now, that you're going to have, the clients are going to have multiple clouds, multiple public clouds, probably multiple on-prem systems, clouds, right? And you have to connect them all together. And I would just say, especially since the digital transformation kind of exploded during the pandemic, because it kind of had to, right? When we were all at home and doing things online and getting FedEx and UPS to come and drop stuff off at our house and all those types of things. Transactions kind of exploded. Clients accelerated their digital transformation. That drives more transactions. That drives more workload for the mainframes. And just not more workload, we've really modernized the mainframe. In fact, in many cases, the mainframe is absolutely state-of-the-art, leading-edge technology, better than any other processor or chip or system out there. And the software, we have an immense portfolio now that, again, is connecting clients all around the world.
So that COVID-induced digital transformation that you referenced, if I understand it, you're saying it wasn't just a one-time hit, like a lot of things in COVID. Yeah, a lot of us are back to the office. Some are 3 days, some are 5 days, but there's still, a remote ethos that we're much more productive remotely. We still order a lot of stuff online, because we sort of got into these new habits, new generations. Is it the same with transactions? There's a muscle memory that developed over that time frame that's been semi-permanent.
Yes, exactly. I think the digital transformation was underway. It's just that COVID dramatically accelerated it, and it has continued today. And now clients are looking at doing more and more online in real time, right? To the consumer, they're just doing things on their phone, right? But in the systems that support all those applications, especially things that are financial or high value, those are all pretty much on mainframes. And so more transactions to the mainframe. There's also been regulatory increases over time that banks have to have more resiliency around the world. And so we're setting up more resilient infrastructures with our clients. So there's a number of things driving it, but I think it's a trend that has really was accelerated by the pandemic, and it's here to stay. And the important thing for me now is to continue to introduce new capabilities into that stack so that clients get more and more value out of their mainframe.
Let's talk about the hard news. A lot of innovations that you guys are announcing around Z17, new generation Telum, Telum 2, new accelerator called Spire. You've got the core infrastructure enhancements. Take us through some of the highlights.
Sure. So the Telum 2 is the microprocessor, right? And there's 4 operational cores on this microprocessor. And on there is an AI acceleration unit. We introduced having that in Z16, but what we've done is we've significantly enhanced the capabilities and the performance within this accelerator. We've also then connected the different cores and accelerators within a drawer. So one core in Z16 could get to 1 accelerator. In Z17, 1 core can get to 8 accelerators simultaneously. So we're really upping the amount of horsepower from a predictive AI point of view that clients can put against their AI. And then with Spire, we're adding in generative AI, encoder models and decoder models. Encoder models will be used more in a transactional sense. Decoder models are used more for agents, chatbots, and assistants that are doing work on behalf of a persona, like a system programmer or a system administrator. So hardware, new hardware, Telum 2 and Spire. But the real benefit of that is the software capabilities and the productivity that our clients are going to see.
So one of the original innovations on Telum was on chip, on microprocessor AI,
yes.
right? As opposed to sort of a bolt-on
That's
separate accelerator. Explain what that does what value does that bring to clients?
So you look at our core business and it's transaction processing and data serving. So in transaction processing, if you're processing 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 transactions per second, it's milliseconds count because those transactions have to be done very quickly or things are going to slow down. Customers are going to notice that, right? So by putting the AI accelerator in the microprocessor, we basically reduced latency as much as you possibly can, as opposed to going across a bus or opposed to going across a wire, an Ethernet wire, a network. So the game is latency and latency reduction. And we've been able to make it so that a client can do a full inference and now multiple inferences within the 4 to 6 window they have to do an entire transaction. They can do those AI inferences all less than a millisecond within that whole transaction. That's the game changer. That's the value add that clients are seeing in transactional AI.
Let's stay on AI for a moment. So you've got sort of traditional AI, the machine learning,
Yes.
we've talked about for years and years and years. You can see as a consumer, your fraud detection gets much, much better, and it's even going to get better today and in the future. You're not doing hardcore training on the Z,
No.
right? So explain that, explain how you're positioning traditional ML and generative AI.
Sure. So let's start with training though. It's a great question. So since the beginning, so since Z16 and carried on into Z17, our view is we want to take a client's model and run it. So bring your model. We don't care the framework you use. We don't care the tooling you use, where you train it, how how your data scientists do business. You bring your model, and we're going to compile it basically and tune it to our architecture. And that's a transparent step that happens very quickly. So it runs on Z. So we can say to any client, wherever you're doing your training, wherever your data scientists sit, you can keep using all your tools. We'll just take your model and run it. So it's a very powerful statement that our clients didn't have to do something new to train their models for Z. They don't have to do that. So just full stop there for a second, that this open nature of train your model anywhere and bring your AI to the data on Z is a very powerful notion our clients have grasped onto. That's the first thing. Second then, so you've got traditional AI, predictive AI, machine learning, right? And now you've got generative AI. So the predictive machine learning type of AI that's been around longer is really helpful when you're doing things like transaction processing, fraud detection that we talked about. You can get really accurate with that. But can you get all the way accurate? Can you get to up to 99.999% accuracy? The answer is no. So what clients have asked us to do, and this is all client driven inwards to us, they said, we want to be able to run in fraud, but I can give other examples. In fraud, I want to be able to run 2 models. And in some things like anti-money laundering, they're running 3 models. But let's stick with fraud. They're going to run a traditional predictive AI model. If it's clearly not fraud, they're going to let it go. If it's clearly fraud, they're going to stop it. There's always a gray area in there. And the gray area is they worry about, because if you deny a good transaction, you're going to have a customer who's mad at you because it was a good transaction, it got denied. Or if you let a bad one go through, then that costs you money. So how do you tighten this up? Well, you run a second model. You run a encoder model. Maybe it's BERT or Roberta or one of those models that basically does the fraud in a different method, but comes up with an answer. And then you compare the 2 answers. And that's what's going to give you a very fine, very, very good view of, is it fraudulent or not? So it's this new multi-model support that we have. It's all client driven, and it's to make the modeling and the outcome of the modeling be as accurate as possible.
I want to take that to like a human experience, if I can. So you think about fraud detection as a credit card user for decades. It used to be you'd have to look at your statement and find it yourself. Okay, those days thankfully are gone. But to your point, when you're using traditional ML, if it was clearly fraud, out. If it was clearly a good transaction, let it go. If it was a gray area, it was a false positive.
Yes.
And the number of false positives that we have today is less, but we still get them. And it is a really frustrating experience. So what you're saying is you're taking generative AI to create a probabilistic outcome and better predict, and then say, okay, we're going to take those false positives down even further. So that means less frustration, less having to go back and redo the transaction, which is always an unpleasant experience for a consumer. That's what it means for an end customer, right?
In like some of your experience, I'm sure you've experienced this. Your kid's out shopping with your credit card, and you get a fraud alert on your phone because it's a gray area. It's a gray area, but you don't see it. That's at least what happens to me. And then it gets rejected, and then your kid calls you and says, "Dad, your credit card got rejected." And it's like, so there's this time lag then that can happen. And it's that kind of frustration that credit card companies want to eliminate. They want to just have it be very accurate. So multi-model support for extreme accuracy.
Nice, frictionless. Okay. Let's talk about simplifying the mainframe experience. You guys spent a lot of time in the analyst session around that. I was struck by the number of personas that you queried and interviewed and went deep with in terms of, I guess you were looking for what are the things that you're doing that are mundane, that could be repeatable, that a machine can do probably better than a human. It was really astounding the number of different roles that you guys talked to. How is AI going to change the game of those individuals that are supporting, the mainframe infrastructure and software and business?
It's a great question. So 48 personas we studied deeply over these last 4 years. But let's just pick 3 that are really important to a client. System administrator, system programmer, operator. The people that configure and run these systems. So by having an assistant with as many agents as needed in a chat type of a format, so easy to use format, that a user, a system programmer, let's take a system programmer, they can start to ask just plain English queries and ask the system questions. Now, the system will go dig through 100,000 SMF records and a million of these, right? The system will go dig through the data that used to have to be done by the human that was kind of like digging through it on their own. The system can do that and then come up with an answer, a summarized answer. There's as you saw, there were links if you want to dive deeper on this data, or if you want to explain how the system got that answer. So what an assistant will do is it should free up the time of the humans. It can't totally take over all the tasks, but it can free up 90% of their time, maybe more in a lot of the tasks. We're seeing right out of the gate with Watson X Assistant, the first guinea pig was the IBM CIO, right? The client zero, we call them. They get to use it before anybody. Is this going to work? So just one quick example. So in doing DB2 patching, right off the bat, first time out, they save 50% of the system administrator's time. 50%. Wow. That's with a product that wasn't even generally available yet. So it only gets better from there. So it's those types of things. So you have to study the persona of the system programmer, system administrator. What do they do? Where are their pain points? What are the things that they just are very tedious that a machine could do for them? We study that with them, and then we just started using AI to automate and augment and give intelligent responses that, again, could be much faster from a human point of view to get the job done.
I want to follow up on something you said. You used the term assistant and agent. Mm-hmm. What's the difference between the two? How do you think about that?
My view is the assistant is like the larger program, like the Watson Assistant. This is a complete chatbot, if you would, a highly advanced chatbot with models that are tuned, that are trained for this type of task, that then can be fine-tuned by the client, but with the client's own data around this set of tasks, like a system administrator. Agents are then they're subroutines, AI subroutines, very powerful subroutines that can then go off and do specific things, dive deep on a specific topic and be very informed on a specific topic, or even go and kick off a whole bunch of automation to shut things down, start things up, convert things, right? I mean, so taking the task away from the operator or the system administrator typing things in, just take over and do something once they get the go.
Got it. So the assistant is like the ex officio,
yes.
The agent is very narrow, and kind of a worker bee, but really good at what it does.
And I think there's going to be more and more agents that pop up as we continue to find out what tasks are the next ones that are really impeding productivity for the humans.
A lot of talk out there about quantum. IBM obviously has a big play in quantum. It's a big part of your future roadmap. Quantum safe. What should clients be doing now to make sure that they're prepared for the quantum era?
Yeah. So quantum safe really is protecting the most part of it, the biggest and most important thing is to clients to protect their data with the new quantum safe cryptography algorithms. So there's a journey they have to go on because clients today, a large bank, for instance, may have 4 to 6 different types of encryption they're using because it's different encryption for different use cases. So they need to do an inventory, and IBM has tools and capabilities to help them discover where they're doing encryption today, so the client can then step back and look at their inventory. Then they can decide, okay, what's the most valuable data? Maybe I'll start there, and that's the first place I'm going to go in and change from my current cryptographic scheme to a new quantum safe scheme, which is supported by Z16 and Z17. In Z17, we've upped the game. There's easier ways to do the inventory, but in the end, they actually have to change algorithms. So that really means they have to run some jobs that will read the data and decrypt it in the old algorithm and then rewrite it in the new algorithm, in the new quantum safe algorithm. Quantum safe algorithms that protect against potential, hacking, if you would, deciphering of the keys to open up the data. So the new quantum safe algorithms that are all approved by NIST now, it's been a 8-year journey to get NIST to finally approve 4 key algorithms, and those are all implemented in the Z17.
Do you think this is like a Y2K moment, which of course Y2K was incredibly successful, nothing bad happened. People sometimes poo-poo it, but I think a lot of work was done, as you well know, leading up to Y2K. Their similarities, or what are they and what's different?
So it is a Y2K moment without that exact moment in time when it's going to happen, because no one really knows when quantum computers will be large enough from a qubit scale point of view and stable enough to crack 256-byte crypto keys. And no one also knows when the bad guys will have their hands on them. Certainly the bad guys aren't getting their hands on any of the IBM quantum computers. But there's other nation states creating their own quantum technology. So it is a little bit of a chicken and an egg, but what I've been telling my clients is, we know that there are bad guys, we're just going to call them that out there, that when they break in and they're stealing encrypted data, they're just stealing the data and they're putting it aside, and they're waiting until they have a quantum computer that can break it. So the sooner clients can encrypt with the new quantum safe algorithms, the more protected they're going to be. Now, some data, if it's broken in 10 years, is probably worthless. But there is a lot of data, financial, medical, et cetera, that could be very valuable to the bad guys, and we want to protect against that.
So that's the big difference, is the clock is ticking, but we don't know when the game ends.
No.
And so as a result, with Y2K, people knew, and there was an urgency.
Yes.
Is there a lack of urgency now, and is that a potential blind spot for folks?
I think that it's a great question, but I think that both the US government and the EU have started to communicate clearly, let's just say, about not just for banking, but about all, I would say, essential enterprises within their country scopes, that quantum safe is important. And they're starting to put in dates when clients now have to implement quantum safe. And those dates are all within about the next 8 years, knowing that they have to go down a journey to get there. I'm just encouraging clients to go faster.
Yeah, and so is that regulation, or is that just encouragement? Do you think there's need for regulation?
There will be regulation in essential industries.
Yeah. Good.
In the U.S., there was an executive order that Biden issued about this, and it's making its way into regulation.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. That's where regulation makes sense.
Yes.
Let's talk about regulation, but how it's bad, but it's good in this case. I'm going to close on the statement you made at the end of the analyst segment. You said, this is a tidal wave of capability that we're delivering here, the likes of which we've never seen before. So pull out your telescope a little bit. Show us, where are we headed with this tidal wave?
So the tidal wave I was referring to was all of the IBM software capabilities that are being delivered on this platform now. Essential things like database and transaction systems, but all of the systems management and AI-assisted and automation-assisted operational software that's here, whether it's for observability, it's performance management, capacity planning, threat detection and watching and fighting threats across your network. All of the software that we're developing, that the IBM team is developing, I've never seen this much capability being delivered in a short amount of time, in a year. And it's really encouraging, because our clients need to connect the mainframe in with their whole enterprise, and they need to take advantage of all of these end-to-end enterprise type of capabilities across their infrastructure. And that's what Skyla and her team are delivering, and that's what I'm so excited.
And bringing AI to the data to bring proprietary advantage, inject AI and intelligence, the need for transactions, it's all coming together. Ross Morey, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, David. It's been great talking to you.
All right, you're welcome. All right, keep it right here. We'll be back with more action from IBM Z launch, Z17. You're watching theCUBE. Right back.
The CUBE Collective is a community of dynamic, independent thought leaders, industry experts, and professionals from across the enterprise technology landscape. The CUBE has assembled a diverse group of executives, entrepreneurs, and innovators who collaborate to explore, amplify, and discuss emerging trends, innovations, and challenges shaping the future of technology. The goal of the CUBE Collective is to foster knowledge sharing, spark meaningful conversations, and provide actionable insights based on decades of collective experience and data. Together, these experts analyze the most impactful developments at the cutting edge of the tech industry. Join the CUBE Collective as they analyze the shifts transforming and shaping the future of technology.
Hello, welcome back to theCUBE's coverage here in New York City at IBM's One Madison headquarters. I'm John Furrier, host of theCUBE for the IBM Z launch. A lot of great action. Tina Tarquinio is here, Vice President of Product, IBM Z and Linux One. Tina, great to see you here on the launch with exciting news. We had a chat prior at the NYSC where we talked a lot about, you were kind of teasing it out, but now it's all revealed. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, so now we can freely talk about the next generation mainframe we've announced.
So Rick Lewis had shared at the investor meeting, and it was mentioned in the keynote today as well about some of the performance numbers. What has been the main driver for the success of the mainframe up to this point? Because a lot has been unveiled here that's going to look like a major revenue driver and a value creator for enterprises that are looking for the transaction processing.
Yeah, so I think you're referencing Rick Lewis and Ross mentioned that our growth over the last 3 programs have really been phenomenal, right? Our revenue has outperformed program to program for the last 3, but also our installed capacity of our clients has grown about 3x over the last 10 years. And I really attribute that to really laser focus on, outcomes for our clients. Really, we've spent over 2,000 hours with our clients doing user research to come up with what are we going to put in the next generation mainframe, and really focusing on what they need, when they need it, and how they need it.
A lot was announced, Z17, Linux 1.5 showcased here today. There's going to be an ongoing set of other unveilings at Think and Red Hat Summit. The tagline, do more at the core. Love it. You had a tagline, I think, from chip to ship. Obviously, you're in product management. You guys have done an amazing amount of work. The clock was not the friend today, all the announcements and the news to get out there from all the presenters. Take us through the hard news. Walk us through what was the key announcements today for Z17.
Yeah, so we announced IBM Z17. It's our next generation mainframe. We're really excited to bring this type of capabilities to our clients. I would say the big news is AI throughout the stack, right? So this is a full platform launch. So AI technology on the chip, attached Spire accelerator, PCIe attached for new workloads, and AI all the way up through the full software stack. And I do talk about from chip to ship. So what I really love about the mainframe platform is that we have teams that work on the silicon all the way through the software and application layer. And that's part of our secret sauce, right? We really work together to optimize that platform.
I want to get into some of the breakthroughs, at least from our standpoint as the analyst looking at it. It was very much I won't say an awakening, but it was really more of a dot connecting moment for us, because you can see everyone kind of knows the mainframe. You guys have been performant and dominant in the financial services area, but there was a whole AI first kind of design concept and architecture, Telum 2 processor, AI accelerator, the form factor and the scale were huge kind of new things. Could you share some of the thoughts behind that, behind the processor, the accelerator, and then the form factor, really kind of designed for AI?
Yeah, so in addition, this system will be bigger capacity, right? So it'll be almost 250,000 MIPS, and it'll have the the 8 nines of resiliency that our clients depend on. 90% of the world's credit card transactions flow through the mainframe. And so we infused AI throughout the stack. So in Telum 2 is a next generation system processor. It has our next generation AI acceleration on the processor. So we've increased the throughput for AI activity 7.5x, but we also have reduced the amount of energy it takes to produce that throughput. So really proud of those types of metrics. We introduced the Spire accelerator, which as you mentioned is a PCIe attached card. So this is where we'll start to run generative AI and large language models. On Telum 2, we'll continue to increase our ability to do predictive AI, and then we'll combine that now with the generative AI capabilities. So this is really exciting for our clients who want to run a multi-model environment. And in the software stack, we're adding on our watsonx platform, right? So we have watsonx Assistant for Z and the watsonx Code Assistant for Z. And both of those will be able to run on Spire, which means on-prem, on Z, with all the qualities of service of Z when they're available in the fourth quarter.
You and I were talking before we came on camera. I also asked a question about this earlier, about the accelerator as a PCI Gen 5 card, and the processor itself is really well designed. So it's on the board, right? That's not a disadvantage. It didn't really kind of jump out at me as a negative. I saw it as kind of a net positive. Share the importance of that. What's the alternative going outside, off the system? Because I think this is one of those things where you can have optionality with the card accelerator and take advantage of the silicon advancements.
Yeah, so normally if you were to do a simple, go through a financial transaction, you'd want to score that transaction. Is it, detection for fraud? Is it anti-money laundering? And if you don't run that, fully on-prem on the system, your alternative is to put it off platform. You ETL the transaction off, you do the scoring, and you bring it back. Most of our clients don't have that SLA requirement that allows them to do have that amount of time, which is really how we arrived at putting the AI acceleration on Telum 2. We wanted low enough latency that you could score every transaction within the SLA and still meet your performance goals, which is, I'm proud to say our teams have delivered.
Yeah. And doing that alternative is going to have a performance hit as well.
A performance
Huge
hit,
latency.
A security hit. I mean, those aren't risks our clients really want to take. And as a consumer, I don't want them to take them either.
Yeah, and the silicon's great. And I think one of the things that jumped out at me too is the success formula in AI seems to be a couple things. One, just from a architecture standpoint, from a silicon standpoint, getting closer to the silicon is all the alpha developments going on. When I say alpha, I mean like the hardcore. That's where the performance can be unlocked, and then the enablement on top of that's going to come at the data layer. Again, this is something we talk about all the time. But the things that jumped out at me that I heard, words like real time, multimodal, generative AI, these are table stakes, foundational elements that have to be built into the system level, down to the core. Again, that's the theme, that tagline, to the core. And so you're getting major inference improvement. I wrote down notes, 7.5x inference throughput, 5.4x energy savings. It's an AI integrated chip level innovation. Talk about why that's important for those three characteristics and what happens next.
Yeah, so in order to get that kind of like throughput and that kind of savings and just the performance that our clients demand, it had to be, right on the other side of the bus. So when that transaction goes through, you can easily execute the scoring and get back to continuing the transaction and have those, if you're swiping your credit card, you want that to happen quickly, right? We all want that to happen quickly. And so when you start to move into, well, what if that score comes back and it's not a high enough confidence score? Well, the payment companies want to run a second model, and that model is usually bigger and is different in nature, and that's where you want to run it on the Spire accelerator. And we've designed Spire so that it can run that second model and still meet all the SLAs. Like that's pretty, so we're talking like, milliseconds of time here. And so, but once we have this Spire accelerator, well, now we can start to run the generative AI models. And this is really where you can unlock use cases across the enterprise in terms of productivity and just better outcomes. And so what's next is, unlocking these use cases for our clients. The Spire accelerator being PCIe attached means that we have the ability, in between generations to deliver new capabilities. And
I think having the Gen AI LLM ready really kind of hits the large scale models too. That's going to be a very key thing from the computing primitive standpoint. One of the things that jumped out at me was the on-chip DPU, and the accelerator gets the buzz because Spire is cool, but the on-chip DPU is also another highlight with 8 custom microcontrollers per cluster. I mean, all these like hardware gems on the board itself.
Yeah, it really unlocks, the full power of the mainframe. So we introduced the DPU. This is our, an I/O accelerator on chip, so to speak. So in the prior generations, we actually had ASICs on a card that you would plug into the system, and we've moved all that capability from those ASICs onto the processor itself. And so not only does that allow higher performance and better optimization, but now we've freed up a huge amount of space in the system, and which you can populate with your Spire accelerators.
The other thing that jumped out before we get into the use cases, I want to dig into the stack implications for the use cases that it's enabling, is that massive I/O concurrency is going to be a huge thing in the coherency. You hear about parallel processing in some of the other conferences, but the coherence across the system is a transactional element. And then the news here is like transaction processing is now going mainstream, because that's not just what you guys have been doing with Z in the mainframe and financial services. Again, 70% of all financial transactions go through Z, which is a huge stat. People might not know that, but that's not just in financial services. There's a lot of other markets that come from the transaction processing game that is enabled by all this action around the data and the soon to be agentic systems. You're going to need to square those workflows too. I mean, as you use the word squaring and scoring, that's a financial term you've used on stage, but there's going to be new things coming that's transactional. Could you shed some light into what that's going to look like?
Yeah, I would say over the last 3 or 4 years, I mean, the digital transformation across industries the velocity has picked up, and I think our clients are seeing productivity gains, they're seeing better business outcomes, and so that only incents them to do more. And when you want to do more, you need to scale, you need to do it securely. If you're in a regulated industry, you're answering to regulators, you're answering to audits frequently, so you really need to make sure the environment you're doing this all in is the right one for the job. And with the mainframe, with Z17, we've really enabled our clients to just unlock, do what they need to do, and to do it in the best safe environment possible.
One of my favorite slides that they showed to all the analysts was the 2 circles, predictive and then generative AI. Those all have use cases. As it comes together, it intersects and kind of connects. You have kind of the sweet spot that's predictive and generative, but also both other markets are hot for Z2. Can you explain some of the use cases? I mean, predictive has been around, it's not new for IBM, but all those use cases like fraud detection, money laundering, and then what's the Gen AI side, and then what's at the center of that? What's the intersection?
Yeah, so predictive AI, like you talked about, we've been doing, machine learning type of scoring on the platform for a long time. We've worked with our clients to really help them there. If you think about generative AI, this is where you're using encoder, decoder models. This is where Watson X Assistant or Watson X Code Assistant, we're using generative AI to help our clients achieve skills that maybe they want to save time and do something else, or get newer talent on board, and upskill them quicker. Where those two meet, to me, is where we're really going to unlock a whole lot of potential. So a simple use case is, like an insurance claim, right? So if you had an insurance claim, you might go in and write what happened. And so the insurance model would, the claims review model would take, sort of static data around homeowner policy, location, actuarial data about what's happened in the area. And now it's going to take an encoder model and read the prose that's been texted in, someone broke in my house, and it's going to use that for sentiment analysis, and it's going to understand, is this nefarious or is it a true claim? And so you take this encoder model with the predictive model around the static data, and now you can get to, is this a real claim? Should we send it to a person to really evaluate, or can we approve it? It's a loan. So that's where you're really going to get some use cases unlocked.
And I love the comment that was presented around AI being infused foundationally. It's not just the technology, it's inherent, because you have AI in the system itself, making the system better, but then you have the AI enablement for the applications kind of both hitting. It's a double bottom line win.
Yeah, AI is throughout the stack, right? So you'll see we have AI-powered security. These are things like, ZOS threat detection, right? Using AI to help identify, is the same data set being accessed multiple times in a way that's a unique pattern, right? And is that, some bad behavior. We have sensitive data tagging, so going through different types of record sets or data sets and, redacting personal, information so that those data sets can then go off to a data scientist and create your model in a safe way. So AI is being used throughout the stack.
Yeah, and this is going to be a great lift for Z, because now becomes it brings it to a rarefied air because they have the experience on scale and the transactions brought out. Ross said on his opening, I wrote some notes here, Z is not just surviving, it's thriving. Clients are modernizing around Z, 2x increase in use cases, revenue growth tied to innovation, not just footprint. Was. And then you came on and talked about the design, the personas involved, the work you guys did. Share some insight into that piece of it, because there was a lot of things it's a lot of legacy in the mainframe that's built in, and the AI's coming in. You guys identified work streams and workflows. Talk about the personas you talked to and some of the work you've done to kind of make it easier, simpler to use and automate.
Yeah, so first, I always say, we're obsessive with this client feedback, right? So we leverage IBM design thinking. For Z17, we spent over 2,000 hours with our clients understanding the technology that they would like us to deliver, when and how to deploy it. And that really, as a product owner, is how I decide what we should prioritize, right? I don't have a blank check to do everything I want all the time. So with them, we work through, what should be the priorities and what do we want to introduce with Z17. On the simplification front, we have done a lot of work on the application developer persona. And so we've worked through that they have a standard DevOps pipeline, cloud native feel. And now we're shifting our focus to sort of the system administrators, right? Looking through the entire system and understanding where can we reduce complexity or abstract things, remove altogether tuning parameters. And that's a heavy lift, but we really want to lower that bar in terms of skills in the industry and making them, as common as possible.
So how are you feeling? You feeling like relieved? Now take a little small break and then game starts again for you.
Well, I'm excited. I mean, I think Ross showed the technology outlook, right? So we are always working on 2 or 3 mainframes at a time. They take about 5 or 6 years to develop and bring to market, and we introduce them every 2.5, 3 years. So for sure, we have the next generation underway, but I'm excited. It's really fun to work on something for many years, and then we finally introduce it to all of our clients. And I joke all the time when I say, what's my favorite mainframe? And it's always the next one. So I'm excited.
And the next is in the name, pun intended. So I have to ask you, as someone who runs product, you have the keys to the kingdom. You got the inside look to IBM, you're seeing the innovation. Ross laid out a roadmap, which, you don't have people don't just come into the ecosystem and you have steady customers basing their business on IBM Z. So you've got a 3 to 5 year outlook. He mentioned some of those operating cycles. You have to build kind of multiple years out. You have that 20-mile stare. The customers are expecting it because they're designing their business around Z. So what are you working on? What are the key goals for next plus 2 and 3? Because I know there's I think he said 2027, put it out in a couple of years. I don't know how far he went out, but you guys have to work on the next logic and the next system.
So we already have a great group of people that are working on the next processor, and we have a small team out front on the next processor. So for sure, you'll continue to see us work on performance, resiliency, scalability, serviceability, and security. I mean, these are the table stakes, right? So we'll bigger, better, badder, faster, as I like to say, more capacity, more memory, all of those things will continue. You'll see us really focus on accelerators, right? So we have an AI accelerator. We've introduced encryption and compression accelerators, really looking at the end-to-end transaction and where can we accelerate one part to make a difference. Sustainability, I think, will continue to be a focus area for our clients. And so, we'll continue to focus there. And I think, nobody has a crystal ball in the AI space, but doing everything we can to be ready as the market changes.
Yeah, one final question for you, because you mentioned something I want to get out there, because I think I saw the accelerator, and that's a great optionality for bringing the models up. Because one question that analysts are asking, including us, is, how do you future-proof the change in the models? And then Ross made a mention that Z has been built out, overbuilt. It's got a lot of performance in there. So there's a lot of headroom. Talk about the importance of that, because you kind of decoupled the velocity and the step function change on the model side while preserving the innovation that you guys have. And I think this is an important headroom piece. Could you just illuminate the importance of that piece?
Yeah, I mean, we've engineered the system to give us that headroom, right? So, initial Spire will support 48 cards in a system, but we have plans to support 96 cards within a year. And so we know we have that headroom built in. We know the models are going to get bigger. We know the way models are going to be paired together are going to change. So really making sure that our software stack above there is as agile as possible. From a compute point of view, we have clients that are always pushing the edge. And so we try to make sure that we're just a few steps ahead of them always, and that they don't run out of, they have the room that they need. So that's really how we're driving the roadmap. And then, as we build those systems 2-3 out, we already know like how big we want to make them.
Well, the market's hungry for more compute and more, and you got all those components engineered for performance, bounded by energy, a huge part of the success. Not just throughput, the energy savings engineered well into the system. So that's going to be a big factor. Thanks for coming on theCUBE.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be back.
All right, okay. Tina's here inside theCUBE. We'll see a lot more action as we go to IBM Think and a lot of other events. The concepts of big systems are powering the wave of AI, and IBM Z launch happened today. I'm John Furrier, host of theCUBE. Thanks for watching.
theCUBE brings you the latest news and trends from the heart of the Silicon Valley. Our experts provide in-depth analysis, interviews with industry leaders, and breaking enterprise technology news. Don't just listen. Join the conversation. Be part of the community. theCUBE, extracting the signal from the noise.
Hi everybody, we're back at One Madison for the IBM Z launch. I'm here with Skyla Loomis, who's the GM of IBM Z software. We heard earlier from Ross Morey about the Z platform, and for years, when it comes to mainframes, Skyla, we talk about exploitation of the hardware. That's where software comes in. Welcome back to theCUBE, good to see you.
Thank you, good to see you too. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. So talk about your mission and the scope of your responsibility in the portfolio.
Yeah, so I'm the general manager for IBM Z software, and I like to say kind of most everything above the operating system on the ZOS platform. So our core runtimes, our application and data, but then as well as like our compilers and our languages, some of our security capabilities, what we do for developers, but then also what we do for IT operations and AI ops. So really kind of the whole span of the experience, right, that you really have around the Z platform.
How would you describe the IBM Z software strategy?
So, I mean, I think specifically what we're trying to do on Z is we're really trying to remove the friction around the platform. So we want to seamlessly integrate into the hybrid cloud. We want to empower and embed AI around all of that to really dramatically simplify and reduce the skills that are needed to be successful and get as much value out of the platform for our clients as possible.
Right, so you're trying to take away, I mean, we talk about this all the time in AI, take away the mundane tasks that nobody just, we saw this with like things like with RPA, right? At first people were maybe a little concerned, and then they were embracing it and thankful. I know in our own experience that's been the case. But I want to follow up on that and talk about the simplification. I thought the answer you gave around a question that I asked around personas, your thinking is they'll evolve.
Right.
So how will AI simplify client operations, and how will the personas evolve? What should we be thinking about in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years?
Yeah, so I think, particularly on the operations side, there's a lot of, I think manual work that clients have to do. There's a lot of there's skills that are very like proprietary to the platform, JCL, Rex, right? And so some of the things we're doing is we're bringing enterprise standard automation. Ansible's already been there for a long time. Terraform we're bringing to the platform as well. And JCL is one of those things, right, that job control language. It's a very mainframe specific type of kind of almost semi-program that you write to sort of like do things on the platform, right, to make changes on it. And it's a very unique thing. It's not necessarily that easy to learn. And by leveraging these common enterprise skills, right, you're able to enable and empower more people to work on the platform and be successful with the platform. And it also, I think, starts to raise what these personas are doing, right, versus kind of manually running these things, running these jobs or scheduling them. But you're now more starting to move into like infrastructure as code, right, which we've seen happen, that transformation happen to infrastructure folks and in other platforms, right? I think we're going to see that same type of transformation on Z. But then also, like with the advent of AI, it'll help with generating some of that automation perhaps for you. It'll also make it possible so that you can be just interacting with a chat, and you're asking questions, but then relevant automation will come up and be part of, offered to you as, hey, let me just go run this, right? It's already been vetted. It's already trusted as part of the enterprise automation. And so we're really, I think, going to make those personas able to be much more productive, much more efficient, and I think much more approachable to folks who don't have to have as much like deep, ZOS core knowledge, so that then they can focus maybe on higher level things like how are we optimizing the environment? How are we, making it as performant as possible? How are we, making sure we've got the fully resilient architecture? So it might become a little bit more like systems level thinking as well, right? In addition to just the ongoing management, they'll become more and more automated and AI assisted.
Interesting. So take JCL as an example. That was a coveted skill set, and now you're saying, hey, let the machine do that for you. You focus maybe on optimizing the platform so we can get more business value and drive value for the client's clients.
Right. Exactly.
You talked about 3 core, I call them pillars. I don't know if that you use that term, but app dev, which drives agility, and then the whole app and data management, that core runtime.
Yep.
CICS is an example, and
Yeah.
then IT ops, which is all about being more efficient. I wonder if we could sort of dig into each of those and get your perspective, how you're thinking about the evolution of those and what that means for customers. I mean, obviously app dev. You mentioned DevOps practices and infrastructure as code, driving more agility. How do you see that evolving, and where does the Z software portfolio fit?
Yeah, I mean, I think app dev is really interesting because there's a massive amount of code on the mainframe that's been developed over many decades in most of our clients. So, and it's all of their business logic, right? All of their core business logic is built into this, but often they don't understand it. They may have a lot of risk potentially around this, and particularly in some of the regulated industries, right? That can start to become a challenge. And so I often think of these applications as like big tangled up balls of string, right? And you're afraid to pull on one of the strings because you don't know what's connected to and what's going to happen to everything else that's related to it. And so what we're really trying to do is make it possible for clients to be able to make these changes and have the right level of business agility with confidence and low risk, right? And so we're doing that in a few ways. We've been on a journey for a while where we're bringing just common developer tool chain to the ZOS platform. VS Code, Git, Jenkins, any, Artifactory, I mean, you name it, right? Basically, you can use all of those common tools on your core ZOS applications. So this reduces the learning curve just from a tools perspective, right? Developers have all of their creature comforts. Now, maybe they're still working on a COBOL application, but honestly, COBOL isn't that hard to learn. And developers learn new languages all the time, right? Like when Go came out, people didn't say, oh my gosh, that's a new language. I can't possibly learn that, right? No, they dug in and they learn it, right? So the problem isn't the language and the problem isn't the tool chain anymore. The challenge is just this complexity of the application and the lack of understanding around it. And this is where I think AI becomes a game changer for us, because we're able to give you X-ray vision into that ball of string. And so when you pull on something, you know exactly what it's connected to, right? And we can actually provide, now, we've had graphical ways of doing this. Now we're actually starting to have chat ways of, just being able to ask questions like, where is a particular set of business logic, right? If I need to update a motor policy, what transaction actually is that motor policy living in? Where is that data stored? What is the logic to do that update? And it'll kind of like zoom you in, right? Finding that needle in the haystack in your application. So you don't have to have this deep SME knowledge of your application anymore to be productive and effective and confident then in the changes that you're making.
Interesting. So you can visualize those dependencies. When you mentioned all the different sort of tool chains, is that integration or is that an abstraction layer, like a translation layer that you've built?
I mean, those are, we've enabled them to just natively understand COBOL, PL1, assembler, right? So that you can just use all of those tool chains as is. In some cases we had to, for a build to integrate into CI/CD, we have a module that, helps do the build integration. But in VS Code, for example, right, we've natively built in understanding of those languages in the debugger, et cetera, right? We just have plugins that know how to do that, and you've got the exact same experience there as with any other language.
And the app dev piece to me is so interesting. And one of the frustrations I hear from that community is, when infrastructure as code sounds great, DevOps sounds great, but they're being asked to now secure the infrastructure. Is that different in Z because of the security ethos? It's sort of designed in and is maybe less onerous for the application developer, or is there a similar sort of dynamic from the security standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, I think Z is, we kind of consider it the most secureable,
Right.
platform around, and so a lot of it is built in. We also have like a whole range actually of security tools that not only help you to do the securing, but help make it easier to understand what you should and what best practices are there for it. And frankly, these applications have been around for a long time. They've gone through a lot of security. They've gone through a lot of compliance. They're already secure pretty much, right? And so you're able to kind of take advantage of all that investment over the time and be able to kind of continue to leverage it.
All right, what the middle layer of the sandwich, if you will, the app and data management, so the core runtime. What's the value prop there? What are you trying to, what are your objectives? What are you trying to optimize for clients?
Yeah, so there, right? I mean, that's really like, I've had a client tell me that core, part of their business is like the heartbeat of their enterprise. Mm-hmm. All of the money flows through it, right? If you're a bank, right? All of your insurance claims flow through it. If you're an insurance company, right, et cetera. And so like you almost kind of like aren't an enterprise without those things. And so, I think there we're really trying to help take advantage of the data that you've got and the data gravity that exists on the platform. Again, it's there, it's secured already. It's rich, and when you start to marry what now the hardware is enabling us to do, right? We have capabilities where we can just within DB2Z be able to do similarity analysis of both structured now, and in the future we're going to be adding unstructured data that may exist in there, so that you can actually do analysis of, say, insurance claims that are there and be able to pull out and summarize what the cause was, what the claim is about, be able to assess risk, be able to do a similarity of these claims to maybe fraudulent claims, so you can actually determine what the risk factor is on a claim for fraud, and then that's where you can start to bring human in the loop, right? But you're driving a whole lot of efficiency into your business process because you said, hey, a bunch of these are good, right? And we've got patterns and we know what the recommended approach should be for how we respond to these claims. But you know what? These look a little sketchy, right? Like you might want to go examine these, go ask for more information. But we can automate a lot of that process, leveraging the AI that we have built into the platform, the hardware capabilities, and then taking advantage and offering that on top of this gold mine of data, right, that we really have available.
And this is where, again, we talk about bringing AI to the data. Organizations have that proprietary data. That's not going to go up into the cloud or to get trained on the internet.
Right.
That's unique advantage for those organizations. And that's, I think, something different. I'd love to get your perspective on this. Than say the cloud era, okay, I've got my apps on-prem. I'm going to maintain them. If there's compliance things, I'm going to comply. But I'm investing a lot in this sort of new apps. Today, I need to invest in those. You mentioned data gravity, first time I've heard that term today, but it's a really important concept. Mm-hmm. They're not going to move their claims system and these core transaction systems into the cloud.
Right.
It's too expensive to move. It doesn't make a business case to do so.
Right.
And as a result, that feels to me anyway, it's ripe for innovation and investment within organizations because the business case is there, the payback of that proprietary advantage. Whoever gets there first it's going to confer advantage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think too, related to that, I mean, we kind of talked about insurance example, but you think about all the financial transactions that happen, and there's how many hundreds or thousands of ways that people come up with to do fraud, right? Yeah. Around transactions, and there it's so important that you catch it in the moment, right? Like that timeliness is essential, right? You catch it, 6 hours, 24 hours in a batch window later on, that money's gone. Right? Like trying to get it is almost not worth the effort even at that point, right? And so, but today, often banks will only run their AI models to try to catch fraud on 10% of their transactions. It means 90% are just going through, right? And maybe they'll catch it later. And so there's tremendous opportunity, even just leveraging some of the models and capabilities that clients already have and just running them all the time. Because now if you run them on platform with these chips, with the performance that we've built into the Z17, that's incredible value and very easy to do.
And that's real-time inference, things, fraud detection is an obvious one, anti-money laundering,
Yeah.
KYC, know your customer, all of those and many more are going to benefit from that real-time interaction.
Absolutely.
And then IT ops is sort of the third leg of the stool, and that's really all around just efficiency, machines doing things that humans could do, but machines probably can do them better.
Yeah, honestly, like I'm really excited about this area because I think it's one that hasn't gotten as much sort of love and attention over the last few years, and it's a big data problem. Effectively, right? I mean, the amount of data that these machines and these applications produce just around how they're running and what's happening is massive. And that's partly why it's so hard and required so much skill, because humans had to kind of pick through and try to find things. And you would get a little bit of assistance from the machines to do that. But now I think we can take like logarithmic levels of improvement, right? In terms of how much we can help our users be able to proactively find the anomalies, right? Correlate all the data together across all these different parts of the system, be able to do that advanced anomaly detection using machine learning, bringing in more AI models, and then actually not just doing the analysis, because even that I feel like we've had some of the capabilities around for a bit, but now with agentic AI, right, these reasoning kind of self-encapsulated, right, kind of agents, and the fact that they can talk to each other, right? They can know, oh, I've got all these tools at my disposal. Oh, we found this as a Kix problem. Let me go to my Kix agent that really understands Kix and can help me to pull the data that's relevant to this. Let me get the DB2 data. Let me correlate this together. Now let me give you a recommendation on how, what the problem might be and how you might start to solve it. And I think we're not quite there yet, but where we want to get to also is providing the explanation of everything that happened, right? So there's transparency around it, not only so you can trust it, but so that we're actually teaching our users at the same time. So we're not just, fish, we're not just helping them catch their fish, right? But we're teaching them how to fish, right? So they understand what happened and what's going on behind the scenes as well.
That's kind of always been the mainframe way. I mean, you think about RACF, who did what, when, where, that bringing that to AI. I want to actually jump ahead, stay on agents for a moment. We were talking to Ross earlier, and I asked them the difference between assistants and agents, and assistants kind of the Uber ex officio, if you will, and agents really good at a particular task. What's your strategy around agentic and the framework that you're using to think about it? Because it is early days.
So we're really, I think, building on the shoulders of the broader IBM software and research platform. So, it's not just, IBM Z and the mainframe that's focusing on agentic. IBM as a whole, right, is investing in this area significantly. And watsonx Orchestrate is one of the products that is really kind of in the leading edge in partnership with research, building out an entire kind of agentic framework that will be able to be applied to multiple different domains. Also thinking about how we can help clients, build their own agents, right, to be able to kind of plug in. And so they're really building all of that out so that you can have inter-agent communication. How do we, define what each agent is so that it knows how to kind of call it and find it. So all of that is really kind of being built at an IBM level through software and research. And then we're really kind of, I think of us as kind of partner zero or client zero, right, within IBM, leveraging it and specializing kind of our application of that to the mainframe with the specific agents, domain-specific agents that then we're bringing to the table that will leverage that framework, and then that we can provide feedback and help improve the framework and kind of work together in that way.
And one of the big values, of course, that you bring is that you've got transactions. And we've said, if you're going to build a real-time digital representation of your business, digital twin, people talking about them all the time.
Yeah.
And these are systems of agency. You can't do that without transactions. That's what transactions enable. I want to close by talking about the business case. I know you guys do some business value assessment. I've talked to many clients. Every time there's a new Z that comes out, they say, we just buy it sight unseen because it prints money for us. So I have no doubt you've got many, many orders, probably already. I'm confident. My question is two-part: the core business value, and how does that core business value get enhanced with AI? How should we think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, we're really trying, from the software perspective, right? We're really trying to drive productivity, efficiency, and I would also say like risk reduction, right, is the other thing, which is maybe a little bit hard to measure. But I think on the productivity side, we are focused a lot on, okay, if you had to, as a developer, maybe from either a low end of experience to a high end of experience, go in and try to understand, where in this application that motor policy lived, right? How long would it take them to do that, right? They would have been literally like searching through code, or the newbie would have, right? Maybe someone experienced knows, oh, I worked on that, a few years ago. I think maybe it's over here, right? And they might have a little bit starter period, right? But now with the tooling that we provide, right, we can have people come in pretty much cold, right? And be able to see how long it takes them to kind of be able to pinpoint and identify the same thing. And we're seeing 2 to 5x productivity improvements. We're seeing Sun Life actually as a public reference we have, where they were seeing like a 50% productivity. 50 in terms of finding the code and understanding the complex relationships that was there. So I think we can kind of look at like each stage of what happens in a developer lifecycle, going from trying to understand what they need to do, actually doing the code changes and maybe that refactoring. And especially now as we're starting to add in more smarts around what each of these things are, actually building a business glossary behind the scenes so we can understand the elements of the application. So you can just, from a simple chat, be able to kind of quickly ask these questions and, again, pinpoint you and bring you right down to that part. So we can start to measure, right, where we see those things. We had one company we were working with, a U.S. global logistics company, and they were, or I guess global logistics company, I should say, and they were actually looking at how do they modernize and transform and really re-architecture their applications from procedural COBOL right into object-oriented Java. And we help with that use case as well. And we were to leverage our IBM consulting team to help work with them on that. And again, these aren't folks who necessarily know the applications as well, but they come in and they were in 2 months with about 12 developers able to transform nearly 400,000 lines of code. Right? I mean, I think that's kind of levels of, and this isn't just kind of like push a button, machine in, machine out, you gorp in, gorp out, right? Like this is true, like let's re-architect, let's make this object-oriented, let's get to high quality output of the code.
Yeah, lots of software innovation, lots of value that you guys are driving. Thanks so much for spending some time with us, Skylar. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'll be back right after this short break to wrap up. We're at One Madison for the Z launch. Keep it right there.
Welcome back, everyone. It's theCUBE wrap-up from our exclusive coverage here at the IBM headquarters in New York City. I'm John Furrier, Dave Vellante. We heard from the IBM executives here at the analyst pre-briefing of IBM Z17, Linux 1.5, the advancements and breakthroughs in silicon, and Dave, the software, the hardware. Again, this is the theme in the industry, the shift from cloud to on-prem, with basically supercomputing capabilities, the democratization, the compatibility with Red Hat, with RHEL and OpenShift. I mean, all the puzzle pieces coming together. We heard from the executives, business opportunities. We saw all the nerding out on the hardware, awesome processor, multiple chips, systems on chips. You got the DPUs. I mean, really good architecture. And of course, the accelerator is a PCI card that can bring in a lot of optionality. Again, we heard from all the execs bringing down the products from the hardware and software. And of course, the design system of the rack, of the system itself is beautiful. So again, IBM taking Z to another level beyond the mainframe kind of positioning, you're seeing it as a growth opportunity.
Well, and as you know, John, I mean, the sort of conventional wisdom has been, oh yeah, mainframe is in decline. But what happened during COVID is we saw transactions go through the roof as digital transformation was accelerated, and that has stayed elevated. And IBM showed some slides today, they also showed them in the financial analyst meeting, that the cumulative revenue from the Z16 actually increased over the Z15. And I would expect that's going to happen again with the Z17. So it wasn't just a one-time step function. And so the other thing is, I've written years ago that IBM's future depends on its innovation agenda. And what has happened is IBM research has really aligned much better with product in the last several years with product and the go-to-market. And so you're seeing that in a chip design. They announced Telum 2, so the original Telum, advancing on that, so they continue to innovate. They've also announced Spire. We saw that. We talked about that today, an accelerator card for Gen AI. And I really like the way they had sort of the Venn between traditional machine learning and new emerging Gen AI workloads. And what we talked to Ross Maury about was not only the traditional ML, are you going to do a better job of identifying, say, for instance, fraud, but also you're going to compress and minimize the false positives, which are really frustrating for customers.
Yeah, and the thing is too, you mentioned the innovation. One of the things that's coming out of this is clear. Z is not just surviving, it's thriving. Ross said in his keynote opening statements, clients are modernizing around Z. A couple notes here, 2x increase in use cases, which shows that Z is starting to venture into what I would call mainstream transaction processing beyond their core base, which is about 70% of all financial markets are clearing through and squaring up with IBM Z. So I think there's a whole nother use case. And what I loved about Ross's opening keynote is he talked about revenue growth through innovation. So they're tying the innovation that you pointed out with the research and the core team, bringing in all the piece parts like Red Hat, even mentioned Hashi in there too, revenue growth leading through innovation. It's not just the footprint, because even though they nailed the technical architecture around energy, because everything in AI is bounded by energy, we've been hearing that on theCUBE, but revenue is key. Even Jensen Huang at NVIDIA's GTC kind of brought up, spend more, make more. It's a new slogan, which is revenue. He spent time on his keynote talking about revenue. So I think you're starting to see visibility into the innovation wave around the systems level, silicon, chip level, and the software stack that's instrumented throughout the Z stack, driving revenue. So, Z could be perfectly positioned with RHEL and OpenShift to stack into way more use cases. They mentioned climate change is one. You're starting to see the supercomputing, certainly in the cloud, now coming on to potentially on-prem. So I think there's a ton of headroom on growth. And again, IBM, is nailing that. And also they're doing the blocking and tackling work that they're used to. Simplicity, automation, design, reducing complexities. Those are the things that they check the boxes on, which is totally awesome. But the market wants, more horsepower, throughput, and they want better energy savings. So they're kind of nailing multiple things here, right? It was really interesting breakthroughs there.
To your point on revenue, it's always been the case with IBM mainframes that if you get in on the early in the cycle, as banks, for instance, they're going to make more money. And so that's why so many banks just order the next Z sight unseen. And so, again, I would expect that to continue with the Z17. I'm sure IBM's got a lot of orders already in the sort of first wave. I wanted to mention on the software side, I thought Skylar Loomis gave a really good framework for how to think about transactions and transaction processing. She broke it down into 3 pillars. The first one was app dev, which is all about agility, infrastructure as code, the whole DevOps, something that you follow quite closely, but common tooling. So that you don't have to necessarily program in job control language, JCL. You can use whatever languages and whatever infrastructure and tooling you're comfortable with. So that was the app dev piece. And then the heart of the software, she called it the heartbeat, the core stuff, the runtime, the CICS, the app and data management, middle layer, and then IT ops for efficiency, taking away some of those mundane, management tasks that don't add a lot of value. This is why the cloud did so well. It was that undifferentiated heavy lifting. IBM attacking that. You could see in the TCO charts that we saw earlier, the labor costs are getting squeezed out. And so now it's a matter of, can I drive energy costs down? Can I drive software costs down? And how do I innovate going forward?
Yeah, one of the things I was interesting at their investor meeting that they had, Rick Lewis shed light on their performance and why the mainframe program was successful, but there's so much more. When I talked to Tina, who runs products, she's got the keys to the kingdom. She sees all sides of this. The Z stack kind of came in with the Z16 era, and you look at that stack, and we always look on theCUBE for trends. We go to all the events, we see horizontal observation space, and we're always looking for things that rhyme. And what's rhyming here at Z is the fact that you're seeing a lot of similarities with NVIDIA. NVIDIA puts out their roadmap multiple years out. IBM's putting out their roadmap multiple years out. You're seeing stacks fully integrated. But the difference is IBM's open. And some would say NVIDIA is homogeneous. They even said that word in some of the sessions. So you got an open system, okay, that has all the elements of what's rhyming in the market from a success standpoint. You got the Z stack with open source up and down the stack with high performance silicon engineering, okay, is just perfect storm for innovation. So I think there's a huge opportunity for Z to continue to dominate and get those product upgrades you mentioned. I'm sure they'll probably be selling a lot of the Zs to their installed base that wants more performance, all those banks and financial services. But there's now, with RHEL compatibility plumbed into this with OpenShift, you might see Z be a preferred platform for workloads, because with one click, point and click, you can move a workload from x86 over into, say, Linux 1. There it is. I mean, ZOS is great for what it does, but Linux 1 is a huge opportunity. We heard that today from the product manager. Linux 1 is perfectly positioned to potentially mop up those workloads.
Yeah, well, Linux on Z is actually older than theCUBE, John. I mean, it's been around for a long, long time. Yeah, I go back to the days when Steve Mills, back when $1 billion was a lot of money, and Steve Mills says, we're going to invest $1 billion in Linux. So IBM's always had sort of, not always, but the modern history has had really strong open system stuff. My only advice to IBM, John, would be, I think IBM's got to go more on the offensive, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think AI really accentuates the scope of transactions, and there's a real tailwind and halo effect. And then the other thing is, sometimes you hear about that repatriation narrative, and I've never been a huge fan of it. It comes in pockets, but I think bringing AI to the data, because data has gravity. As you know, we talk to a lot of these customers that they want to bring AI on-prem, and IBM has an advantage there. The other thing is, when you think about agentic doesn't work. Agent systems don't work without transactions. I mean, that's what systems of agencies do. They take action. In order to take action, you have to have transactions. IBM has transactions.
And those transactions and those agents have to have proper delegation and trust. And the quantum, future-proof that their security paradigm could be a template for that. They're positioning strong. The AI-first design and architecture with Telum 2 and Spire AI Accelerator checks the box, but the form factor and scale out and scale up in the same box is huge. We hear a lot about scale out, but scale up is super important as well. Again, purpose-built boxes, but the on-chip DPU and accelerator got my attention. I think that's a real breakthrough. I think that's going to be the driver with the open stack kind of model. Not open stack in the traditional sense we know open stack, but like being open source, is going to potentially bring developers in on the DevOps side. So as again, platform engineering converges on a fast track with AI ops, you might see a whole nother set of use cases. I think climate change is the tip of the iceberg. So we'll be following that closely.
Well, we were talking about TAM expansion, you and I offline, but I think just to wrap, I mean, IBM Z's advantage, the underlying platform, it's an integrated system. IBM is deep tech, the silicon expertise, the fact that they design their own silicon, they've got AI chips on there, they've got the PCIe accelerators. They've also got it's not in the Z portfolio per se, but they've got a data stack through lots of data, governance, the security piece, obviously, IBM mainframe security is best in class. These systems don't go down, right? We heard the cumulative downtime was milliseconds, I mean tiny. And that whole notion of bringing AI to the data, I think, is a real tailwind for IBM.
Yeah, and to wrap up, advanced AI certainly is complex, and you need scale. And with the Z17 and beyond, what's coming, you see a lot more broader enterprise use cases beyond financials where they've been strong. So I think enterprise AI might get a nice bump here with Z in their system. So great analysis, as always. Great to be here with IBM for our exclusive CUBE coverage of the Z17 launch. Of course, you'll see Red Hat Summit. You'll see us at Think. We're going to be breaking it down. I'm going to see IBM take it on the road. We'll see how it all plays out. This is theCUBE. I'm John Furrier with Dave Vellante. Thanks for watching.